Bert, what is the word on the draft with the Patriots now that you've had a week to sit down and kind of talk to people? What are people saying?
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's no question that this is going to be judged on what happens with Drake Maye, one way or the other, and that goes for all the teams that took quarterbacks, the 6 of them in the top 12. I think the biggest question I have is, now that we're through the draft, have they done enough to support their young quarterback? And I've been asked a lot over the last few days, what would be a successful season for Drake Maye as a rookie? And I actually think it's going to be stuff you probably won't be able to see. It's going to be what's happening in practice. It's going to be rebuilding his lower half. Brian Hoyer showed us this great video. We did TV with him last week, and he showed us this great video of Josh Allen at Wyoming and what he looked like throwing the ball in a practice at Wyoming, and then what it looked like a couple of years later in Buffalo, and they had completely rebuilt him. And part of the reason they were able to do that is because they weren't a bad team when they drafted him. They had made the playoffs the year before, and so much of being able to make sustainable change to what a quarterback is fundamentally is to keep him out of third long, is to keep him from playing from behind. It's having discipline sometimes when you're in 3rd and 17 to run a draw and not throw him out there to the wolves. And, I've used the Zach Wilson example a lot, Fred. He turned into, after his first year in the pros, he was Chuck Knobloch trying to make the throw from second. It was just like they had thrown him out there and he was running around like a chicken with his head cut off because the team was no good, constantly in long yardage, constantly playing from behind. You have to keep him out of those situations. And how do you effectively do that? And, I think more poignantly now, do you have the team to do that? And if you don't, you can't throw him out there.
All right. So was this the right team to draft Drake Maye? For instance, I heard Felger and Maz play a clip from Chris Sims, and Chris Sims was saying, if they don't play I don't know what his point was, but he's like, if they don't play Drake Maye this year, everyone's going to say, well, then why did you take him third? But the thing was, like, say you traded with the Giants, and you didn't take Drake Maye, and then you took, you just took positional players, then you'd be drafting a quarterback next season, and they'd be starting with the same offense that Drake Maye would be playing if you sat him a year.
There's a couple things. There's a couple problems with that. Number one, the quarterbacks at that level almost never go to the right situations because by definition, the teams drafting at the top are bad teams. Minnesota's an exception. But I think if you gave any of the 6 quarterbacks who went in the first round truth serum and asked them where would they want to play, they all would have said Minnesota.
Mm-hmm.
The situation there is just so much better than the other ones. It's not even close if you look at the other 5, right?
Right. Well, you have the best receiver in the league. You have
a really good number 2 receiver, a top-end tight end.
And you have an offensive guru as coach. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like, everything about it is really, like, right where you need it. You don't take him number 3 overall for this year. You take him over number 3 overall for the next 15 years. And when you have the opportunity to do it, you almost have to. The reason why is, how long are Gerard Mayo and Elliott Wolf realistically going to get? And you might have, if you're lucky, 3 drafts to find him.
Yep.
And you're sitting there at number 3 overall, and the guy with the talent to get you into to that level is there. You can't pass that up. Like, and it's just, again, like, would Bo Nix be more functional in year 1? Well, given what the Patriots have, yeah, I think he probably would be. The guy started 61 games in college. He played for 2 different programs. He can run around a bunch and make stuff happen. So, yeah, like, Bo Nix would probably be more functional for you in year 1. This was never about year 1. This is about, if I'm the Patriots, like, doing whatever I can to get into that club we've talked about, Kansas City, Cincinnati, Buffalo, the Chargers, the Ravens. They're there because they have quarterbacks, and those quarterbacks are all in their mid-20s, right? Houston, I think, is there now.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So how do you get into that club? You have to have a guy who's got the ceiling to get there. And I actually think, like, of the guys in this class, like, Drake has the second highest ceiling. behind Caleb Williams.
Sure.
And Caleb Williams, I believe Caleb Williams, again, you do the whole truth serum thing. I believe that every one of these teams, the 6 that took quarterbacks in the first round, would tell you Caleb Williams is simply in a different category than the rest of them.
And I think they're trying to take that longish term approach to things. But like you said, when it comes to this tandem that's in there right now between coach and de facto GM for the Patriots, they realize they don't have, a 5-year grace period to get things figured out. So was Drake Maye a good kind of like middle pick for them in terms of somebody that they can build upon and get into that club in another year or two, but also give you something maybe this season,
so
6 games in, he could be a guy that goes in and plays?
So here's what I think a lot of people aren't paying attention to that I think is really important. Look at Alex Van Pelt's last 2 years in Cleveland, and look at what he had to do, right? They had 4 different starting quarterbacks last year.
Joe Flacco looked good.
They were on their
Alex
fourth.
Van Pelt
They were on their 4th and 5th different tackles, right? Like at the end of the year. I mean, and Bill Callahan, the offensive line coach, there was a huge part of it. But I mean, most teams get to their 4th and 5th tackles. It's like shut down shop. The season's over. You know what I mean? Like I almost think that was more impressive than the quarterback thing. But they go through. I mean, if you want to go down the list, Josh Dobbs was on the roster in the summer. Dorian Thompson-Robinson, P.J. Walker, Deshaun Watson for a short period of time, Joe Flacco. Like the year before that, it's Jacoby Brissett, building an offense for Jacoby Brissett for 11 games and then having to pivot and go to Deshaun Watson. The reason that's important is because I think so much of getting a young quarterback ready to go now in today's NFL is meeting them halfway, because college offenses are different than pro offenses. And what you've seen, I think, successful teams that have done this the right way do is find a way to incorporate what they did in college into what you're doing offensively, so you shorten the learning curve a little bit. And that's something that, I mean, Bill O'Brien was on the air with us on the midday show last week, and they did that for Watson. They went and met with the Clemson coaches and tried to find stuff where there was common ground. If I'm Alex Van Pelt, if I'm Gerard Mayo, I am on the phone with Phil Longo at Wisconsin, with Mac Brown at North Carolina, going through, here's what, like, we need to know what Drake did really well so we can incorporate it into what we're doing.
You were talking about building a roster to help a young quarterback out. Have the Patriots done enough to address left tackle? That seems to me to be a very big concern right now.
Next question.
I mean, I just don't know, like, but that's the problem. So I actually look at, like, what they've done, and they've thrown some resources at the offensive line, right? Like, so over the last couple of years, what is it, 5 draft picks, I think? Something like that on offensive linemen. The problem is the position, and then you obviously you pay Mike Nwenu, you bring David Andrews back, so there's a basis for something there. The problem is, it's the same problem you have at receiver. It's like the most difficult spot to fill.
Well, you have receivers that can play on both sides
of
of the field. You have a bunch of right tackles and no left tackle.
You don't have a left tackle, right? Yeah. Like, and that's sort of the problem. And it's like you can see it, and like this is part of the cost of taking the quarterback high, right, and not trading down. Is once you get outside of the first round, well, look at the guys they took, right? So they take Jalen Polk, who I think can be a really good player, and he was playing opposite Rome Odunze, right? You take Caden Wallace in the 3rd round, he was playing opposite Olu Fashanu. So those guys were sort of the secondary guys. Well, what does that mean? Well, that means in college, the other team was attacking them a different way. They were being protected a different way, So I think they've got pieces, but like in their defense, like I don't know if there was like once you decide you're taking the quarterback 3rd overall, I'm just not sure there is a left tackle option out there for you.
Yeah, and
I would have advocated for maybe like you see Tyler Guyton, who went to Dallas at 29, like that was they're in striking distance.
Okay, so that's what I was going to say, Bert. I understand at the receiver position, kind of if you're in a certain spot and you want to take a receiver, you just you take what's there if there are 3 or 4 of them because you don't really know. When there is a left tackle on the board and you need a left tackle, that's where you move up and that's where you go get that guy. To me, it always should have been quarterback, left tackle, figure out receiver, 3rd round.
I also think like it's so much easier to find a receiver. You know what I mean? Like, look at like.
But you have better odds of hitting on somebody if there's just someone left there for you. If you try and do that with an offensive lineman, you'll end up with somebody who only played on the right side. And now you're sitting here thinking, "Gee whiz, what are we going to do at left tackle?"
I mean,
that's not a good position to be
Willikers, I mean, my Lord, have mercy.
Oh, that's a good chime in, Fred.
Thanks. I mean, well, you look at the highest paid receivers in the game, right? So. Amon-Ra St. Brown was a 4th-round pick. A.J. Brown was a 2nd-round pick. Tyreek Hill was a 5th-round pick for different reasons. But like Devontae Adams was a 4th-round pick, like I think, or 3rd maybe. Like all these guys were deep into the draft, and it's really, really common. I mean, even like I look at the year we've talked ad nauseum about the 2019 draft with N'Keal Harry. I mean, N'Keal Harry goes in the 1st round. Look who went in the 2nd round that year. Deebo Samuel, DK Metcalf.
Right.
In the 3rd round, you had Terry McLaurin that year. I'm missing somebody, too. But there were great
Where was
receivers.
A.J. Brown that year?
A.J. Brown was A.J. Brown, DK Metcalf, Deebo Samuel in the 2nd round, and then Terry McLaurin in the 3rd round. So, like, that's like why I was saying the last few weeks, I actually think their 2nd pick maybe should have been a tackle. Now, the problem was the run on tackles happened. And that's where I think you could get a little critical of them is, do you go up and try to get a Jordan Morgan from Arizona or a Tyler Guyton from Oklahoma if the opportunity to jump up from 34 is there? I would have advocated for doing that even at the cost of, maybe losing a pick or two and then taking care of receiver later.
If you like that clip, and how could you not? Check out more videos from Toucher and Hardy here. Point slightly up and to the left. For more Patriots analysis and opinion, hit this playlist. Point slightly down and to the left. And for the latest from the Sports Hub, download at 985thesportshub.com.